The Black Car. This is my second story I've posted here about the small town I went to college in. I find it a little bit funny that I have several stories for this particular sub, but I really do love the town. It's beautiful and one of my favorite places. Anyways, this happened about 3 years ago. I was attending the university in a nice, small town in California. I lived just a couple blocks away from campus. It was about a 10-minute walk, so I never bothered trying to find parking and just walked. I had a math class that ran from 6 to 9 at night on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I generally have no issues walking home, even in the dark. I'm 6'3", around 200 pounds. I have a big red beard, and I believe people are usually more afraid of me than I am of them. About a week before this particular night, the school sent out an email to all the students. There have been several instances of girls being stalked and, in a couple cases, attacked or taken by a group of 3 or 4 men in a black car, 4-door car. They warned us to walk in groups and not stay out late. The attacks were all after dark. I remember reading the email and feeling horrible for the girls who had been attacked, but I also didn't pay it much mind, as I didn't quite fit the attackers' criteria. While people had been able to count the number of assailants and describe the car, nobody ever got a license plate number. It was a very cold Thursday night. I'd worn my large hooded jacket to keep warm on the walk. We had a test that day, which meant we got to leave class early. Our teacher would usually spend about 20 minutes going over stuff, then give us the test. After we finished and turned it in, we were allowed to leave. So instead of all 30 or so people leaving the class at once, we were all spread out in our departures. I was probably the 10th or so person to finish the test. I started on my walk back home. I threw on my big jacket and put the hood up. I love this jacket because it's incredibly warm and makes me look like a bear. One of the people who finished the test before me was this fairly petite girl. We had sat next to each other several times, but I'm pretty socially awkward and never spoken to her. She was walking about 30 yards ahead of me. It was around 8 p.m. and dark out. She was staring at her phone as she walked along. We had been walking for a couple minutes when I started noticing something that made me feel a bit off. There weren't streetlights along the stretch of road, so it was pretty dark. I could have sworn I saw something moving in the street, but I wasn't sure. I began to pay closer attention, and after a few seconds, I realized there was a car moving slowly behind this girl. It was a black car, and they didn't have their lights on. It was almost impossible to see them. I immediately recalled the email I received the previous week about the attacks. Small girl, alone at night, black car, holy shit. I sped up to catch her. The car pulled closer as well. I called out to the girl. She stopped and turned around to look at me. As she turned, the car doors opened. I grabbed my phone and turned on my flashlight app. 3 men jumped out of the car and started running at her. I started yelling at them and she started running away from me. They were about to catch her and I was sprinting at them. I am 100% sure these 3 dudes would have absolutely kicked my ass. I'm sure one dude would. I had no idea what was going to happen if I caught them. I started shouting everything I could think of, and I deepened my voice to sound more intimidating. I puffed my bare jacket to look as big as I could. I remember that nobody had been able to get the plate numbers, so I shined my light in the car. I started shouting out the license plate info at them. This freaked out the attackers. 2 of them ran back to the car. One guy turned to me and looked like he was going to come at me, but one of the guys in the car told him not to. I was too big. They flipped their lights on and sped off. I reached out to the girl to make sure she was okay. I shined my light on her to make sure she didn't have a cut or anything by the men. She was crying and shaking. At this point, a couple of other people had finished their tests and had seen the last of the encounter. Another guy from class and I walked the girl to her dorm. She even made us walk to her door on the 3rd floor, even though access to the building required a card. We called the police and told them about the encounter. I had memorized the plate number to the car as I shouted it at the guys a couple times. A month or so later, they found the car. Inside were some knives, duct tape, mace, and rope. They caught 2 of the guys outright and were trying to get them to out the other guys involved. Every Tuesdays and Thursdays, even after the police caught the guys, I would walk the girl to her dorm after class and then head home. It was one of the scariest moments of my life. I thought for a while that I was either going to watch this girl get kidnapped or be brutally murdered stopping it. So stupid, rapey, kidnappy, meanie guys, let's not meet. Two creepy guys in a car. Let's try this again. Sorry, I've posted only once before, and both times my posts were removed. Guess my story wasn't let's not meet material, although I thought it was. You know how the story goes. Long-time lurker, second-time poster. When I was about 12 years old, I was walking from my house to my cousin's house. We were on one street. My grandmother was a street over, and my cousin was 2 streets over from mine. My grandmother's front yard overlooked my cousin's backyard. Now, I could have gone through my grandma's backyard, up her front yard, and go into my cousin's backyard, but I was a kid. I wanted the freedom of walking alone, so I took the long way, down the street, around the houses. I wasn't really paying much attention. I heard a car come up behind me slowly, but I thought it was someone who lived on that street. All of a sudden, I realized the car is inching its way behind me, following me. I turned around, and there were 2 men inside, all tatted up, bald, big guys. One of them said, "Excuse me, can you help me?" Still walking, I said, "What?" The guy responded that he is lost and can't find his way to the highway. I point in the direction of the highway and keep walking away. The passenger goes, "Why don't you get in and show us where it is? We'll drive you right back." I didn't answer, just kept walking quicker. They wouldn't stop. "Come on! You don't want us to get lost, do you? We won't hurt you. We just need some help. Where do you live? We promise to drive you right back home." I started almost sprinting when they stopped the car and passenger door jerked open. Just then, I was getting to my grandma's house. I ran into her driveway, around the corner into the backyard, and across the street to my house. Panting, I ran towards my backyard, got in the house, ran upstairs, and looked out the window. The guys hadn't seen me run into my house, so they had no idea I was looking at them through my bedroom window. When I looked out, the 2 guys were looking for me in the bushes of my grandma's yard. I was shaking. Before I even had the chance to pick up the phone, they were gone. So creepy pedophiles, let's not meet again. He pulled me into his car. When I was 19, I went to school to get certified in a certain medical field. I was engaged to my now husband, and we would be getting married in the next year. Classes were held at night, and the first night, I found a seat in the back at a table. Seated at this table was a man in his early 40s. His smile was friendly, so I sat a couple seats down from him. He introduced himself, and we exchanged pleasantries. For the first few weeks, all was fine. We were partnered together in class on assignments, and we were both good with the material, so we would get good grades. One night, we were in class, and he started complimenting me, my hair, eyes, nails. He touched my hand as he complimented my nails, and I started feeling uncomfortable. I said a simple thank you and ignored anything else he said. As the weeks went on, he started saying inappropriate things about my fiancée. He would say that he loved to challenge him in a fight to see who won, and he thought that he would. At this point, I started to distance myself and sat at a different table. One night on a break, he invited me to dinner at the most expensive restaurant in town. He said he would love to take me back to his house after and have some drinks. He said I should leave my fiancée and travel with him. He bragged about the amount of money he had. I reminded him I was engaged, and these comments were inappropriate, and to stop with them. He laughed it off like he was joking, but said okay, that he didn't want to make me feel uncomfortable. The next few weeks, anytime we saw each other, only school-related topics were discussed. I felt at ease again, and figured he was just a man trying his luck with a younger woman, and I put a stop to it. On the last night, we had a pretty difficult final test, and we were allowed to leave after. I was the last to finish, and was happy I aced it. In our class, we would walk out the back door to the parking lot. The instructor left through the front door that led to the hallway, and I left out the back. Outside waiting for me was Creepster. "I'm not letting you walk back to your car by yourself," he said with a smile. "Oh, I'm okay," I said back. "Come on, I'm parked next to you anyways." At this point, I had no other option. The parking lot was empty except for our cars, and the back door locked from the outside when it shut. I walked, making small talk about the test, trying to get to my car and get it unlocked. When I got there, his car was one space over from mine. His driver's side door was facing my driver's side door. He opened his door first and sat in his car. I had to squeeze past to get to mine. A mistake on my part, but he wasn't leaving first. "Your butt looks incredible," incredible in those jeans," he said, his voice low and sending shivers down my spine. "That's inappropriate. Can't take a compliment? I think you need a spanking." At this point, he grabbed me around my waist and pulled me into his car onto my stomach across his lap. He hit my butt 3 times. I was screaming for him to stop. He did and let me go. I got out and got into my car shaken. He laughed and drove away. I never told anyone. My fiancé was already angry about the inappropriate comments. I knew if I told him, he would literally hunted this guy down and probably have gotten himself in heaps of trouble. It doesn't end there though. I used my certification in that field for a little bit and decided it wasn't for me. A couple years later, I applied for a job as an office assistant. I was called in for an interview. When I went into the interview room, there he was, sitting, smiling at me. It was a position to be his assistant. Apparently, he had worked at this place as a director for years and was currently using his certification for a side job. I didn't even finish the paperwork. I left. Not before hearing him tell me how much he would love to have me as his assistant, though. That was 6 years ago. I haven't seen him since, and I prefer to keep it that way.